Hello and welcome to day 17. Today is Monday the 17th of December. I'm trying to catch up on Vlogmas as I had some busy days. Today is my first day of maternity leave. No baby yet, hopefully not for the next few weeks. And I didn't really do much today, so I asked if you had any questions on Instagram so I could answer those instead. I think I said for my podcast, but it doesn't matter, it's for Vlogmas. So I wrote down a few questions in my old bullet journal and I will try to answer those and sip on some tea like a normal podcast episode. So one of the questions I got is if I will keep podcasting once I go on maternity leave, and I would really love to. I have no plans of stopping, but at the same time, I think I talked about this in one of my previous podcast episodes. My daughter was not the easiest of babies in the way, I think she had some reflux or something. She was very unhappy, very fussy, didn't sleep long naps and didn't sleep well at night. She was very healthy, no problems there, so the doctors just kept telling me, but she's gaining weight, she seems happy, she seems content. But yeah, that was only if we were out, or even when we were out she would cry a lot. So yeah, I'm just not sure how much energy I will have and how much how much in a break the family life will be, like how much in a bubble I will be with the baby and everything. So I don't want to promise anything. And even if I podcast, there will probably be shorter episodes with little less video, like outside filming and stuff. But who knows, maybe it will be all fine. Maybe I get one of those babies that just sleep for the first couple of months. That would be pretty interesting to try, because I never had that with my daughter. I remember one of the things I was so jealous of is people would sit with their babies and just have eye contact, and and I didn't have 5 minutes where she was not unhappy or in some way, not having it. So just those quiet moments with eye contact and so on, in the beginning they didn't exist really. So I'm just trying to be realistic and not put too much pressure on anything. It's really weird before it happens because I have so many things I want to do, but I'm just really, from the last experience, of course I would be a more experienced mom the second time. Probably that will help a lot for me feeling less stressed about this whole new situation. But we also have another child and I'm just trying to be realistic, as I said. So I also got I got a question about if I would show more of the house. Someone said that it looks like a lovely place and they would like to see more, and on one hand I would really love to show more. I think I will show more of my workspace once I get it all set up, just before the baby arrives. And I really like to planning it out and doing it very nicely, but I also I'm a very private person, so the areas where the family is spending the most times, I'm not gonna show like a tour or anything. You just get little snips here and there because it's okay for me, but I don't want to show too much. So but I'm also a really nosy person, so I love to see how other people live, but it's just I don't like everyone knowing everything about my house, my family, that kind of thing. A lot of today because I'm looking at the list of questions and thinking what I should take next. It's not really planned, this one, it's just sitting down and talking. I have a few questions on designing, so I think I will tackle those next. One of them is how I started designing, and actually my first design that I wrote down the pattern for was this hat. It's not looking that pretty anymore because it's been used quite a lot. This is the Yori hat, and this is actually the first one I made. I know that because I know in the ribbing, where is it here? The space is too big because I didn't calculate that they should be 4. So there's a big piece of stockinette or reverse stockinette here. Anyway, this was the first one. I wrote down the pattern mainly to knit it up and sell it. I used to sell it on Etsy until I realized that selling patterns or selling knitwear was not really profitable, and I'm not that fast of a knitter, so I wouldn't get my time back, as I wouldn't be paid for my time properly. Also, as I live in Denmark, which is a very expensive country to live in, it was a really poor payment. But as a student, I used to make these when I was a student. I also had some other designs. It was quite okay. So that was kind of how I started. I thought I should knit the things for others. So the pattern, writing the pattern, was secondary. I only wrote it for myself. And it was the first pattern I released, but I was not really, I didn't think I needed a tech editor. And I didn't really use so many testers, and there were some issues with the gauge, and since then I realized that it's mainly because this is knit out of an alpaca yarn and it's just grew so much. This hat fits me like no problem, but for the pattern, almost everyone had issues that it was too small. So recently I decided to write it up again, this time in a wool yarn. This is Quince & Co. Lark, and I just redid the pattern in a different gauge, and so as you can see, it's a little bit different, also the colors. And this one is done working from the gauge, not just working from whatever fits my head. So there's a bigger chance it would work for others too. Yeah. So that is the Jordi hat, and it was the first pattern I put out there. And I also used to make, like, let me see if I can put it on, chunky headbands and stuff like this one, more hats in the same style. And I made these for a market where it was the time when the neon pop came in, and I tried to sell them on a market, but again, the price I could ask for these for the amount of time I would actually spend on them and getting to the market and all this, I didn't feel it was worth it. I had another one here, yeah, another one with a neon pop, and I don't know what to do with these because I'm not using them, and I don't know if I could sell them, so they're just lying around. Sometimes I use them for presents, and yeah, so those were my first patterns. Those I didn't write down, but I wrote down the Jordi hat as the only one from that time, and then sometime later I had the idea for my first sweater, and this is the Rødtur sweater. I've shown it many times. It's my first real pattern, I want to say, because it's the first pattern I made with the idea of selling it or making a garment pattern that I could put on Ravelry. And this one is, I made it for my own size and it worked out really well. And then was the issue with grading the pattern, because I really had no idea. And I remember I used a book that had a recipe for grading a yoke collar, but since this is brioche, it's different, and there was a lot of guessing and trying out things. It actually didn't go so badly, but I think it was not the right way of approaching pattern designing. It should probably, or as I do it now, I would use a swatch and calculate and see, but I still think it's important. And sometimes I hear people who talk about how they will just knit a sample or they will just do the calculations first and then knit the sample for all sizes. But I think there's always a little, even if you can calculate everything, and I think you get a lot from working with the garment as you are writing the pattern. So I'm still doing that most of the times, or at least I will change the pattern as I go if I do the calculations first. Anyways, so when I released it, it had a few sizes, and recently I just resized it a bit. So I added a different size large. Instead I have 2 mediums and some more extra large and so on. So this was my first real garment, and I wouldn't recommend a garment for your first design. I mean, the first garment will always be a challenge because you have to get into the whole grading and fitting a body, and whereas a shawl, it's still complicated. I thought it would be easier. That was mainly because of the charts for this one. They really gave me a headache how to write them and put them into the pattern. But a shawl doesn't have to fit the body shape in that way. You might struggle with getting the shape you want, but it doesn't have to fit different body types and sizes. So I wouldn't recommend a garment for your first design, but you have, if you want to make garments eventually, you have to do it at some point. But probably I would recommend doing something small as a hat or accessories, just to get a feel of how to write a pattern, and then you can try to do the grading, because doing everything, learning everything at once is it's interesting. Yeah, and the same person asked me about pattern pricing, and that's a difficult one, because for me there's more things to it. When you're a new designer, you don't want to put your pattern prices super high because you think that nobody will want to buy them. So you look a bit at what others are pricing their patterns for. Also for me, at least I know if a pattern is too expensive, I just feel like the whole cost of the garment with the yarn, with the pattern, with the time, it's just too much. So I want to try to keep them relatively cheap, because that way I feel like it will be more approachable for people. But when you start out, for example, you're not gonna get much money back from all the hours you spend, and if you pay a tech editor, which you should. So it's really difficult, because you spend so many hours, but if people don't buy your pattern or they don't know about you, then you don't really get what it's worth. But it takes time, so with some time people will start to know you, and you sell more patterns, and then you get better, of course, and then you start actually earning a little bit from your patterns. And of course you never know which patterns will be popular, which won't. So it's really hard to calculate what the price should be, because it depends so much on how many patterns you end up selling. So I find it really hard, and in the end I just have an idea of, okay, sweaters should cost this much, accessories this much, and so on and so forth, depending on how many details there are. But of course that's not really the way you probably should do it, but that's the way I do it, and I think that's the way a lot of people do it. I don't know, because it keeps changing how many patterns I sell. Also with time I sell more. Before I used to sell less. So it's really hard. And if you, for example, start out with a free pattern, which is a very good idea just to get feel for how it is to design, then the free pattern won't give you an idea, because everyone wants free patterns. You will have so many downloads on a free pattern compared to pay for a pattern. So it's really difficult, that's what I can say. But I think in the beginning, maybe look at what other people are charging for similar garments or similar designs, and then don't be afraid to change it. And for example, one thing I don't do is I don't do a discount code when I just publish a pattern, which I know will generate probably a little more sale and make it more interesting on Ravelry and show up in the Hot Right Now page. But for example, for this one, it actually went on the top 20 front page, and I'm super excited about it. But I don't think it's necessary, that's what I want to say. So, and for me, that just means like I sell the most when I just release the pattern, and then I don't want to take off, because I already think I've priced it pretty reasonably. And I talked about this before, and yeah, that's just how it is. So, and then again, when I talked about it last time, I got comments that you don't need to apologize and don't need to feel bad. It's not about that. I just want to try to explain what are my thoughts behind it. And apparently I seem like I'm apologizing when I do that, but it's not really the way I feel. I just want to explain why other designers do this and I don't. So, okay, I got a question. Let's move on to something else. I got a question about visiting Iceland, because I mentioned it, I think in Vlogmas, that I visit Iceland, and that was when I was, I think, 14, with my parents, and my brother and sister also went along, and it was an amazing trip. But of course, as a teen, some things you don't see the same way. Maybe I was 13, I don't remember, somewhere just in the early teens. And my parents had borrowed a summer house from someone they knew up there, and when we arrived there was an old man living in the summer house. It was his house. And it was just a small hut, and I remember it smelled so badly of dry fish, which is very popular in Iceland, and I guess this old man must have eaten it a lot, but we had to kind of clean the house first before we could stay there. But other than that, it was really lovely. It was in the summer, so we had the long sunshine all night, and I remember we went to meet some friends of my parents and saw horses, and I went riding on Icelandic horses. My mom had Icelandic horses up until recently, so that's an interest of my mom and my sister mainly. And so yeah, I had a trip on a horse that all of a sudden ran away with me, and Iceland is kind of bare, so the horse just started running and I was sitting on it, and there's nothing to stop it, no fences, no anything. That was fun. Yeah, and we saw dolphins and whales and all the things you're supposed to see when you're in Iceland, and it's absolutely beautiful. We were mainly up in the north, near Húsavík, and also, yeah, just places. My parents tend to do natural travel, so there was a lot of bird watching and stuff on that trip. And mosquitoes. We went to Mývatn. I don't know exactly how you say that. And there were a lot of mosquitoes, but it also means mosquito water or something. Yeah. And if I will be back, I would love to go back to Iceland. I think it would be with a very different approach now that I'm adult, and also it's just so beautiful. So I would love that. Another question. My favorite Christmas treat, and I really had to think about that one. What is my favorite Christmas treat? I really like the cookies. I think, yeah, they will be in my previous podcast, the dark cookies with a glazing on top that my mom makes. I really like, we have a weird tradition for Christmas Eve. We make small potatoes that you put on a pan with melted sugar, like caramelized sugar and butter, and you eat them like that, warm, with duck on Christmas Eve. I mean, we eat duck, some people eat other things, but generally you have the sweet potatoes. It's normal potatoes, but you sweeten them. That's a really strange tradition, but I really like to have it, and I only have it that one day of the year on the 24th, which is when we celebrate Christmas. We don't really have anything on the next day. But what treats? Pioneer, little brown cookies. And also, I don't know, it's just a combination of all the things, but yeah, there are a lot of nice treats. And risengrød, as I also showed in one of the podcast episodes, which is boiled rice or cooked rice with milk and cinnamon sugar and so on. That's also very Christmassy for me. So it's things I might not want to eat all the year, but we eat it around Christmas and it puts me in the Christmas mood. I think that's it. And duck, we only eat duck that one time a year, but it's really good when we eat it with the prunes inside. Tastes good. So what else? I think that those were all the questions. Yeah, I think that's enough for today. We just got a huge package today from my Polish in-laws. As you can see, there's a lot of cabanosy and 3 big cookie jars. Let's see if I can do this one-handed, which is pretty much impossible. Oh, there we go. And they are filled with cookies. All 3. And then there was a lot of Christmas presents. And the last thing is one big cake full of fruit, dried fruits and nuts that we always get for Christmas. I think my boyfriend called it cakes. Yep. So
quite a lot of stuff. Crazy in-laws.